All right, we're on a roll here responding to comments, so let's keep responding to comments. I'm actually going through them in chronological order, so these are actually older comments. I definitely respond to each comment with a comment of my own, but what I hadn't done to this point was actually to go through them in a video, other than a few choice ones where there were people who commented voluminously, like I said, with a lot of objections, and we answered those in a series of videos. So J Cox 1982 says, "What is the deal with this guy and his erroneous comments on all your videos?" Lol. Yeah, this is in response to our first lien HELOC Velocity Banking Answering Objections series, which I did with DeAndre Clayton. We were responding to a couple of commenters. One of them, his name was Thomas. The other one, his name was Confused. And we responded to some of their many objections. And so we had, I think, a pretty good dialogue there. And it gave us a really good teaching moment. So I want to give credit to our critics here because they did they did raise some valid points that were worth discussing, that were, I think, hopefully a teaching moment for the audience. So then J Cox 1982 says, "Yeah, I've been keeping up with each series of answering this guy's questions. I'm in the process of trying to obtain a first lien HELOC myself." Yeah, congratulations, man. Let me know how it goes. Keep me posted on how things are going, and I'd like to know what you're using it for. Are you just paying off your house faster, or are you paying off other debts, or are you doing some more advanced strategies? Do you have a whole life policy as well, or are you doing the complementary strategy of infinite banking? I'd love to hear how things are going for you. But thanks for commenting. Okay, Oki's Lab Seekers 5688 says, "So is the cash flow use what someone would be putting in savings normally? What if the person doesn't have very much cash flow to use after expenses?" This is a question on the first lien HELOC, and the answer to your question is simple. This strategy works better the stronger your cash flow is. So if you don't have a lot of free cash flow, this strategy may not work for you. With the first lien HELOC, we're running all of our income through our HELOC. And if we don't have anything left in the HELOC, anything left over after we paid our expenses, then we're not paying down the principal on the line of credit at all. And we need to pay down the principal, right? Otherwise, this strategy won't work. So we can always run the numbers and just see. It depends on a number of things, but probably the most important is cash flow. The more free cash flow you have, the better this will work for you. The more your cash flow is restricted, the more we have to probably look at alternative strategies. So thanks for your comment, Oki. Okay, MDA0214. Okay, this guy actually, I've got to give him credit. I'm not going to go through our whole exchange here, but MDA0214 is actually a fund manager, and I had a couple of exchanges with him on, I think, the comment section of Chris Kirkpatrick video in addition to this one. And he actually, I think, handled it very well. So thanks for commenting. And he was not trolly at all. And we just had this back and forth on when is it appropriate to use whole life policy loans, when is it not, right? And I think his basic point is to say that he likes, from what I understand, and I'm putting words in his mouth now, but from what I understand, he believes whole life insurance or cash value life insurance can be a good asset, and but it only makes sense to use policy loans when you're financing an investment. So when you're using a policy loan to finance something where the interest you're earning in that investment, or the cash flow you're getting that in that investment, is more than enough to offset the interest you're paying on the policy loan. Okay. And so we went through that because, in my mind, it can also make sense to use policy loans to finance everyday expenses. Tyler Willie, I had him on my channel recently, and we walked through an example where his mom used her policy to buy her Tesla. And it's not just a numbers conversation, although certainly we can run the numbers. But that's the basic conversation we have going back and forth. And I already did an entire video response to him. Yeah. So he does believe cash value life insurance is a good asset. He does believe that it can be used for various ways, but he doesn't like the idea of using a policy loan to finance basically a consumer purchase, a depreciating asset like a car. He thinks you'd be better off paying cash or maybe using conventional financing. I'm not sure. And honestly, if that's what we're discussing, I could probably just concede that for the sake of argument, because as long as we're agreed that cash value life insurance is a good tool and you can use it to finance some things, we're not disagreeing on too much. So probably he would just advise maybe taking out a smaller whole life policy than I might want to and using it for more limited scenarios than I might want. But other than that, the only difference you'd probably notice would be the scale. I'd probably be paying a higher premium and be using my whole life policy for more things, financing more things, right? Okay. But you know what? I'll read through some of this. The reason why I actually want to read through some of this is because I think this guy has some interesting things to say, and I thought he handled himself very well. It didn't devolve into a counterproductive argument. So MDA0214 says, now I'm reading in reverse order, so I don't know if this will make a lot of sense, but he says, I think you misunderstood what I was saying. I wasn't saying you're paying double because of the car. You're paying double because of the fees for the policy and the interest. You're ignoring that part. So the policy isn't free. Agreed. The policy is not free. There is a cost. True. Not to dispute, but for understanding. You're saying you lose more money taking the money out. Can you tell me what numbers you're using to come up with that? I'll tell you what I did, and I want to see what you think I'm missing. If I plug the $25,000 cash that was spent on the car into a financial calculator and I give it an 8% return over 5 years for average loan term, I've come up with $36,733. So the $16,733 is the hidden interest. Now, using a loan calculator for $25,000 loan with 6% interest, which I believe is for whole life payment, the payments are $483 per month. Calculate over 5 years, it's $34,712. The hidden interest for that is the fees charged for the policy. So if the fees to hold the policy is $100, making it $583, you're actually losing more because it would be $41,899. I believe cash value is best used as a buffer for bad years, not to randomly borrow against. Okay, good comment. The first clarification is the fees are all opaque. So it's not like they just tack on a $100 monthly fee, and that's the fee in whole life insurance. Okay. Whole life is a very simple vehicle. You'll just see here's your premium payment, and here's how your death benefit and cash value grow over time. That's it, period. So the fees can't really be parsed out. You cannot parse out what the fees are. You can see what you need to know, which is how much do you have in the policy. And from that, you can calculate if you want to call it the fee, the loss of liquidity that you're gonna have to wade through in the early years. But at some point, your policy is all gravy, meaning you're cash flow positive. Every dollar you're paying in premium into the policy results in more than a dollar of cash value. So at that point, if there are still fees being charged, it's irrelevant because your cash value is growing faster. So it's not like they tack on $100 monthly fee. That's not how it works, right? So yes, there are fees charged for the policy. I would say for the purposes of explaining a concept, we're just trying to keep it simple. But you could then include in, okay, during the early years there is a loss of liquidity, right? And you'll still find out that it makes sense to do infinite banking and use your policy. It just takes multiple years then to amortize those early costs of setting up the policy. And that gets to policy design as well. We can design the policy to get more early liquidity or to get more long term performance and everything in between. So, Mr. Fund Manager, I think you're just misunderstanding how whole life policy fees are charged. You cannot parse them out, it's all netted out. So he says not to randomly borrow against. Well, obviously, we're not suggesting anyone randomly borrow against a whole life policy. You should strategically borrow against it. And part of that strategic borrowing could be making consumer purchases like buying a car, like doing an addition to your house, like paying for college, something like that. Okay. And again, if you want to see the context for this, you can watch this video here. It's entitled Financial Credentials or Financial Brainwashing and Posturing. And yeah, I think I was a little unfair to him in the video. I think we had a good discussion, but I also think he's someone who is basically on our side. Honestly, it's more of a nuanced conversation about okay, what's the best use case to optimally leverage your whole life policy. That's really what we're discussing. But we all agree that whole life insurance is a good asset and can be used in various ways. And if you, Mr. Fund Manager, want to just use your policy as a volatility buffer and to finance investments, that's totally fine. The beauty of becoming your own banker is now you can do whatever you want. You decide how you want to use the policy. It's totally up to you. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so now the other point I'm making here, this is in my reply. I'm not going to read through all of it, but an 8% discount rate is ridiculous. Yeah. So he's so this is again a whole nother conversation about what the discount rate is. So he's saying on that $25,000 you could earn 8%. That's true. You could in theory earn 8%, but it would be ridiculous to use 8% as the discount rate because the discount rate is what is the safe return you can get on your capital. That's what the discount rate is talking about. You could get 25%. You could get 100%. If you're a hotshot real estate investor, right? If you're investing in speculative assets, you could get much higher returns, but it'd be ridiculous to use 8% as the discount rate. Okay. Because you cannot safely earn 8%. So something more like 4%, what you could get in a savings account or what treasuries are paying, would be a more fair discount rate. Okay. Okay. And then he asks, so he says, I got you. So me calculating it, the numbers come out similar, but you're counting on your money growing inside of the life insurance account. Is that 4% coming from dividends and buying paid up additions? What if no dividends are paid out for a few years? Again, this is just showing he doesn't quite understand how whole life insurance works. Yeah. Again, what if no dividends are paid out for a few years? Okay. That's never happened. But if that did happen, your policy is still going up. Your cash value grows in multiple different ways. So you're paid a dividend and there's a guaranteed interest rate as well. So if no dividends are paid for a few years, you're still getting the guaranteed interest rate. And actually, Peter Nelson and I had a video explaining why I think if you get the guaranteed rate, that's the best possible outcome in whole life insurance. Not because of what's going on inside your policy, but because of what that would mean for the economy as a whole and what's going on outside your policy. But your policy would still be going up, it'd just be going up at a lower rate, right? So if we're earning, let's say, I'm just making these numbers up, let's say we're earning 4% over the long run in our policy. If for a few years we only got the guaranteed rate, maybe for those few years we're only earning 2%. But yeah, and buying paid up additions, that just gets back to policy structure. That's a whole nother thing that's missing the point here. Yeah. Okay. All right. And then he says, I may be referencing numbers because I'm looking at the opportunity loss. From my understanding, the interest isn't real. It just comes from paid up additions from dividends. If that is wrong, where is the interest coming from? So again, I don't know what you would say when the interest isn't real. It is real. Your cash value grows. You're earning interest and dividends. There's the guaranteed interest rate and there's dividends you're being paid as well. The cash value is there. It's to be used. So it's as real as any other asset. I don't know what you mean when you say it isn't real. And I don't think you're understanding what paid up additions are. That gets back to policy structure. Dividends are paid on the whole policy. Paid up additions is a part of your premium structure. So that's an apples to oranges thing. But yeah, I will just say that this is oftentimes when people do their own learning, that's great. I always encourage people to do your own research. But just understand you need to talk to a qualified professional when you start to get serious about this, right? Because every time I meet with someone, and the people I meet with are smart people who are motivated, who have all the right qualities, but there's always some education that needs to be done. Oftentimes, there are some misconceptions that need to be corrected, some nuances, and so on, just because you cannot completely do it yourself in terms of understanding the infinite banking concept. I suppose you could try, but that'd be if you're going to do that, then I would recommend getting into the business and becoming a life insurance agent at that point. You might as well. At some point, you would need to schedule time with me so we can go through it together, complete your educational process, and get you started, right? You're not going to learn all of this by just consuming content online. At some point, you need to schedule time with me so we can go through it. Okay. The 4% I got from listening to a woman named Kim D.H. Butler, she says after all the fees and stuff, the real number is about 4%. So I'm not sure what Kim Butler actually said, but the answer, of course, is it depends. I would say for a long term net internal rate of return, net after everything, better than 4% is probably reasonable given where dividends are currently. I would say the number is probably closer to 5% than 4%. And Chris Kirkpatrick and I went through a real historical example of a Mass Mutual policy where the internal rate of return was over 6% net of fees, right? That's net. Keep in mind, that's net. If you're in 4% in a savings account, you're going to pay taxes on that. This is a net number. And of course, that's not including the death benefit and all the other benefits we're getting with whole life insurance. Yeah, I'd say 4% is conservative over the long run. It's probably closer to at least 4.5%. But sure, that's a reasonable number. And I say opportunity loss because there are other places where similar strategies can be accomplished and they might be better depending on how it's used. HSA is good to store money but have limitations. The most you can do is invest in the stock market, but it's still good to have. The ultimate place to store money is a Roth IRA. Now, that's a bold statement. I don't know about that. The ultimate place to store money is a Roth IRA. Okay. You can't borrow against it in the same manner, but you can buy real estate and other investments through it, which will grow tax free. And your gains isn't limited to 4% or 5%. Peter Thiel or Mitt Romney wouldn't have their net worth without using a Roth IRA, and there are plenty of others. Well, uh, yeah, there's not time to go into that, but saying the ultimate place to store money is a Roth IRA is very questionable. Obviously, the liquidity there is terrible. You cannot access the money. It's all locked up in jail. You're limited in terms of how much you can put into it. And yeah, I know you can do a backdoor Roth. I know there are other options out there. Yeah, there's not time to go into it for this one, but saying the ultimate place to store money is a Roth IRA, I would say you've got a long, long hill to climb to prove that point. The ultimate place to store money is a Roth IRA. Yeah, that's a bold statement, and I'm gonna have to disagree with you there. The ultimate place to store money. I wouldn't even say it this strongly, but I would say one of the best places to store cash money is cash value life insurance. In a Roth IRA, your money's at risk, so you're not really storing money there, you're investing. So you're not even doing what you're saying. You're not storing money, you're investing. You're talking about purchasing real estate and other investments, okay? Which will grow tax free. In theory, true. That's if you don't need it. Over half of retirement accounts are rated early. There's a huge loss of liquidity, access, and control. So Peter Thiel or Mitt Romney, their net worth has absolutely nothing to do with a Roth IRA. The fact that they have money in a Roth IRA is totally irrelevant to them. Okay, it would make zero difference to them if they had money in a Roth IRA or if they didn't. They would still be just as wealthy. Yeah, they may use a Roth IRA as one of the vehicles where they're investing, but let's not pretend like their riches have anything to do with a Roth IRA. It has nothing to do with that. Peter Thiel got rich because he's an entrepreneur. He founded PayPal. That's why he's wealthy, not because of a Roth IRA. And they're not storing money there. They're maybe using it as an investment vehicle, and they don't need any of that money. They don't need liquidity tomorrow. They got plenty of liquidity from other sources. So I don't think a Roth IRA is the ultimate place to store money. I have philosophical questions about retirement accounts in general. Yes, I'm aware there are some tax benefits and other benefits, but the problem for me is the lack of liquidity, access, and control. The lack of liquidity, access, and control. Okay. Then I responded to him, okay, yeah. So that I should not have done this. I recommended he watch Ryan Griggs' YouTube series on whole life policy mechanics. I shouldn't have done that because that's missing the concept and jumping straight into the mechanics, which is a mistake. Just like when you send people life insurance illustrations, it's oftentimes a mistake because they don't really know how to interpret it. They see numbers on the page, but they don't really know how to interpret the numbers. And the mistake they all make is they start comparing it to an investment. Here he says, I listened to all 7 of his videos multiple times. That's Thank you, man. That says a lot. If you're willing to do that, that's awesome. Thank you for taking the time to actually educate yourself. That's phenomenal. That's why I like this guy. You can tell, even though we have our disagreements, I like this guy because he's willing to do the work. He's willing to do the research. So, hey, good for you, man. You should get into the business. Come join our team. You should be a life insurance agent. Okay. He actually raised more red flags. I forgot about mech. I would just say it's up to each individual's preference. If you're someone who believes in loans and debt, I believe that may be a good idea. But I think overall paying cash will cost more in the beginning, but end up a lot better in the long run. So the concept is not for me, but it may work out well for a lot of others. To me, Dave Ramsey or Warren Buffett's snowball method is stronger and more bulletproof. Okay. Why are we talking about the snowball method? We're not talking about paying off debt here. The infinite banking concept is not a debt payoff strategy. So why would we even bring in the snowball method? You can do the snowball method if you want. There's no contradiction between the snowball method and infinite banking, so I don't understand why we're even bringing that up. I don't understand. And if you want to pay cash for things, you can do that too. Like, I don't see why you think there's a contradiction between paying cash and becoming your own banker. Where's the contradiction there? I don't see it, right? Again, it always comes back to a misunderstanding of the concept, and then along with that, jumping into the mechanics without really clearly understanding the concept. And that's where a lot of these questions usually come from. Okay, instead of using loans for rental property, I believe it's better to pay cash and snowball that into 5+ paid off properties. Okay, so when you say snowball, do you mean do a refi? So you are using debt. You're saying paying cash and then doing a cash out refi. You say snowball that into 5+ paid off properties. Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying pay cash and then use the rental income? If you, I don't know, if you're using rental income from your current property, it's going to take you a long time to get 5+ paid off properties. So I assume you're talking about doing a cash out refi. I don't know. I have no idea what you mean there. Yes, it'll take the average person long, but financially to me, they'll be better off. I won't say you're right or I'm right. I'll just say it's up to the individual beliefs. Okay? All right. And then he says, been reading Nelson Nash book over the last few days. It's starting to make more sense. I would say it's a valuable asset to have in a portfolio. People comparing it to investment vehicles are wrong. It just seems like an alternative and better savings account if you have a lot of cash. It might be a better alternative than my high yield savings. I still say pay cash on depreciating assets, but I'm not against whole life. Need to do more research. Yeah, okay. Okay, and then he says, "Yeah, I definitely need to do more. You're the first I heard compare it to a checking account. No wonder there was such a big disconnect. Even Nelson Nash compares it to a savings account and an asset in the portfolio, as well as Todd Langford, if you ever heard of him." Yeah, okay. I'm glad that you are consuming the content and learning, but at some point, you're probably going to need to work with someone rather than just doing all the research yourself, unless you want to become a life insurance agent, which maybe you do. Okay, and then he said, "LOL, looking forward to this one." This was on the he knew this video was about him. And he was a good sport. I got to give him credit. He was a good sport. Okay, Ivy Figueroa says, "The best velocity banking explanation. It was very helpful to see the HELOC versus regular mortgage payments." Thank you, Ivy. This was on the my first lien HELOC explainer video. Melody N 6419 says, "I can't get approved of HELOC because of my low Uber driver income." This was on the all-in-one loan interview. Getting a first lien HELOC is challenging to qualify for. So I hope you're able to get your income up to the point that you can. Maybe start doing life insurance on the side. That could maybe help increase your income. But yeah, best of luck to you getting that income up. And if there's anything I can do to help you in terms of increasing your cash flow, let me know. Okay, Icon5892 says, "Great explanation like always. I put all my bills and expenses on a credit card and pay before the interest and stack up on flyer miles for free, then pay off cards at the end of the month." Thanks for your comment, Icon. Yep, that's exactly what, in my opinion, everyone should be doing. I talk about running your cash flow through, in this example, a first lien HELOC. But you're right. Really, I should add even a prior step. Really, your cash flow, at least in terms of your expenses, should be going through a credit card first. So you put your expenses on that credit card so you get 2% back or you get points. And then 30 days later, when the bill comes due, you pay it off from your HELOC, from your checking account, from your whole life policy, whatever you're using. In that way, you collect all those points and cash back as well. So, yes, I agree with you. I do the same. I just focus on cash back, though. I don't really do much on the travel point side. And then I suggested you take a look at Ask Sebi's content. Because, yeah, if you want to maximize credit card rewards, there's a whole game out there you can play, which is a lot of fun. And he says, "I will check it out. Thanks again." Icon5892 comments again on another video on the true cost of term. Great information like always. Can't wait for part 2. Thank you. Appreciate it. So this was a 2-part series that Peter Nelson and I did on the true cost of term life insurance. showing that term life insurance is actually the most expensive form of life insurance. Now, convertible term is great. Convertible term, I just want to point out, I would put in a totally different category. If you take out a convertible term policy with a good agent and with a mutually held life insurance company that has a competitive whole life product, that I put that into a different category. That convertible term policy really belongs in the same category with whole life, especially if your plan is to convert it eventually. Here I'm talking about just straight up term, right? Where you're just renting the death benefit. It never pays out, hopefully. Yeah. Okay, now we have confused Zentradi. So I'm not going to respond to this one because we did a video series. So this first thing, HELOC, velocity banking, answering objections. We were responding to comments from this guy, Mr. Confused, and another guy, Thomas. And given that we did a whole video series responding to him, I'm not going to take time to respond here. But if you want to see what he said and how DeAndre and I responded to it, you can look at our first lien HELOC velocity banking answering objections series. I think we've got 6 videos in this series so far. But thanks anyway for the engagement, Mr. Confused. If you want to come back and talk some more, we can keep the conversation going. Okay, Donald Richer 8815 asks, would first lien HELOCs be frozen if when stock or housing market crashes? If so, one could not use their line of credit but would still be required to make monthly interest payment. Scary times. Thank you for your comment, Donald Richer. I appreciate it. This is a great one. I love this one. I mentioned this a couple of other times in other videos. So what he's pointing out is that he's calling it scary times. He's really scary because the first lien HELOC, the bank could freeze your first lien HELOC. And what does that mean? What that means is you have a required payment coming into your first lien HELOC still, but you cannot pull anything out. Let me say that again. He's scared because the bank could freeze your first lien HELOC, which has never happened. But if it were to happen, the bank market's crashing and the bank gets nervous and freezes your first lien HELOC, which they can in theory do. What that means now is you have a required payment coming in, assuming you have a balance, but you cannot pull anything out. In other words, what he's scared about is that the first lien HELOC will behave exactly like a mortgage. When you have a mortgage, you have a required payment coming in that you have to make to the bank, but you cannot pull anything back out. It's a one-way street, not a two-way street. So he's super scared of a HELOC because it might turn into a mortgage. Well, then you should be even more afraid of a mortgage because a mortgage works that way by design. You pay money into a mortgage and you cannot pull anything out. So this comment I found hilarious. But in fairness to him, that would be a negative. In fairness to him, it is true that the bank could, in theory, freeze your first lien HELOC. That's true. Just like when you have a mortgage, the bank could, in theory, foreclose on your house. I don't think you see too many people fear mongering about why you should not take out a mortgage because the bank might foreclose on your house. That's true. The bank might foreclose on your house. But if you get foreclosed on, it probably wasn't because of your mortgage. It was probably because of other things going on in your financial life that left you in a bad spot. But yeah, the bank gives you the loan, whether it's a mortgage or a first lien HELOC, and the bank does have some recourse to the collateral. Yes, it is true that the bank could freeze your first lien HELOC, and yes, that would be a negative. So I'm not dismissing it either. It is a fair objection. I would just say the question is always is as compared to what? Compare that to a mortgage or maybe paying cash if you're in a position to do that and weigh the pros and cons and decide what makes the most sense for you. I will just say that Andy Brown, I had him on my channel. He took out an all-in-one loan, which is a first lien HELOC, in 2006. And so he had it during the worst housing crash on record, the 2008 housing crash. And the bank did not freeze his first lien HELOC while all those other second position HELOCs were being frozen. His first lien HELOC did not get frozen, nor did it even get reduced. And he said it saved him during that financial time. It gave him access to additional liquidity during a time when he was struggling because obviously he's in the mortgage business and the mortgage business got hit really hard. And his all in one loan saved him by giving him the liquidity that he needed to get through that period of uncertainty. But thanks for your comment. I appreciate it. And yes, it is possible the bank could freeze your first lien HELOC. And yes, that fair, that is a negative. So I'm not dismissing your comment. I'll just say as compared to what? As compared to what? Okay, thanks everyone for your comments. That's it for this video. We'll do this again. Bye-bye.